In this video, I'm going to talk about lessons I've learned from writing in multiple genres. You know by now that I love to write in multiple genres. I just can't seem to stay put. I've written multiple shades of fantasy and science fiction, and in the future I'll be branching into other genres like romance and mystery. But I don't write across genre just to do it. I'm actually paying very close attention to genre and what I can learn from each new place I visit. Because that's what it's like for me. Each genre is a new place with its own geographies, history, and customs. And I'm a strange traveler that everyone stops and stares at as he sits on the boulevard having tea. I'm like the Anthony Bourdain of self-publishing. In his words, I'll go anywhere, I'll try anything, and I have nothing to lose. This is one of my greatest passions about being an author. The pure creative freedom that genre hopping gives me is just unrivaled. Here's what I've learned so far, and here are some things to pay attention to if you're a multi-genre author as well. First genre that I love is science fiction. In writing science fiction, I learned how to think about technology. In writing my series Android X, I learned more about artificial intelligence, androids, and the Internet of Things than I probably will ever need. And I also learned how futurists think so that I could create my own vision for the future. Since my main character is an android, I had to take a unique approach to getting inside his head in a way that made it feel real. The big lesson from writing science fiction was learning how to think big. I learned how to weave technology into every aspect of the novel without it being overly obvious. And not just the technology, but people's views on the technology, how they use it, what life was like for them. All of this affects my main character X and how he interacts with the world. Second genre I want to talk about is fantasy. I love the imaginative aspect of fantasy, and there's something that really surprised me with this genre. Despite the fact that it's often pure imagination, there are a lot of rules. Magic systems require a lot of thought, and so does the history of the world you're writing in. I'm actually writing a new fantasy series about dragons right now, and I'm finding that a lot of the things I learned in science fiction carry over. The techniques I used to project the future in my Android X series also worked extremely well in creating history, too. And creating a magic system isn't too different from creating technology, either. There's definitely a reason why some writers say that magic and technology are basically the same thing. I'm inclined to agree with that. Third genre I want to talk very quickly about is literary. Now, I don't consider myself a literary author. Far from it. In fact, the literary genre is what made me become an indie in the first place. But I write a ton of short stories that could be described as literary, meaning there's no science, there's no magic, and the stories take place in the real world with real people. Many writers might tell you that they learned how to write better prose from literary fiction, but that's actually not true for me. I don't remember any of the prose. What I learned is how important it is to have a main character that readers care about. Readers as a whole don't want to read about someone in the real world living a life similar to theirs. They want to see a hero that's doing something unique or unusual with their lives. You don't need magic or monsters for that, but you do need to think about it. It takes a lot of effort to make everyday life worth reading about, and that's a skill worth learning because it translates very well into the next genre I want to talk about, and that's nonfiction. I've written a lot of nonfiction for authors. Talk about a complete 180. The biggest takeaway here was voice. In writing fiction, you have to sometimes avoid the author voice because it's about the characters in the story. In nonfiction, the book is 100% in the author's voice, so that takes some getting used to, but in some respects, it's easier to write. In addition to this, writing email newsletters and autoresponders, ad copy, and blog posts helped to sharpen my author voice. When I returned to fiction, I found that my characters' voices were stronger as a result, and I had some useful tricks to help make them more memorable. And the last genre I want to talk about is poetry. Before I was an author, I was a poet. Believe it or not, there was a time not that long ago when I said I would never write a novel. Funny how life happens, right? Poetry taught me setting. I learned how to create a palpable world in just a few lines. This carried over into my fiction big time. Poetry also taught me how to connect with the rhythm of language, which helps my novel pacing. Out of all the genres I've written, poetry has had the biggest impact on my writing. I still write poetry today because it just makes my prose better. And I bring all the stuff that I learned from prose into my poetry, and my poems tell stories. So those are just a few of the many things that I've learned from being a multi-genre author. And I've got a lot to learn. I mean, this just excites me in a way I guess I can't describe if you can't see my enthusiasm for this. But as my career progresses, I plan to write in other genres, and I'll learn from those genres too. And maybe I'll do some videos on those as well. So if you're going to be a multi-genre author like me, make sure that you're learning as you go and not just writing in a new genre because you think it will sell. Use the experience to become a better storyteller. Remember, genre is a tool in your toolbox. At the end of the day, you should be the same author, just working with different tools. As always, if you're interested in my books, you can check them out by clicking the link in the YouTube card or in the video description, depending on where you're watching this. That's it for this video. If this is your first time watching, I'd love to have you subscribe, and if this video helped you in some way, click the like button. Thanks for watching.